Hey there, guys, gals, and non-binary pals, and welcome into Smite Too Long Didn't Watch, your one-stop shop for all things Smite 2 Founders Series. My name is Gormizer. Joining me throughout this, but immediately at the table is Trelly and J-Mac, and then eventually Zordon back there will come up. Malum will give us the laydown and breakdown of the Smite 2 Founder Series across all regions, including EMEA, NA, APAC, Brazil, and LATAM, which it feels weird gesturing just ominously backwards toward the TV. But again, that'll be a little bit later. So Malum, hang out. And of course, y'all stay tuned as well as we jump into it. So this week, for a lot of the regions, if we include the non-Vegas regions, I guess is the way I can determine the not NA, not EMEA squads, they were going into their playoffs, while NA and EMEA were in their last chance qualifiers. We finally hit a point where all these teams are actually getting factually eliminated, right? You're in the point where do or die. This is what matters. You got to push forward. If you lose a game, like there's a lot more weight to it than dropping one maybe in Swiss and being able to like, oh well, next week it. This is where a lot of the pressure maybe starts to build up. And we start culling teams left and right until we get down to, I think, 3 per region that come in with a couple of LATAM teams in December that we then cull even more from and take only 6 to the HyperX Arena Las Vegas with us in January, which is the 17th through 19th. Make sure that you're tuning in wherever you happen to watch Smite Esports on that weekend where it's going on. But Shelly,
yo,
you're on my right, which I hope means you did EMEA this week. Nope. Yep, that's how I'd roll the dice. No, so I'm kind of curious because I got to watch a few of those games.
Right.
But what's the lowdown?
Well, just a little reminder to everyone, EMEA has 2 groups of 5, whereas NA has 4 groups of 4, so it's just a little bit different in that regard. We're going with a round-robin format here for EMEA, so you're going to see these teams play each other a ton. And as you can see, there is only one team in first place, which is different from Group B, and that is DDK. They have been popping off. They're the only team that has not lost yet as well. Definitely something to keep in mind. And of course, another note in the fact that Mega Plumbers, a squad that did qualify in from the open bracket, or I guess, make their way in from the open bracket, is turning some heads as well. So definitely some guys to keep your eye on. But yeah, Group A, a little bit less contested in that regard. Group B, I think, is where the sparks are really flying. You got 2 teams that are tied for first place. That would be Old and New and Titans Reloaded. Threat level Midnight still definitely a threat, still pretty solid, but did take an L to Titans Reloaded here this week, so just going to be chilling in that 3rd place spot. And then we got KTG and MMB, of course, squads that yet to find wins, unfortunately, sitting at that 0-2 selection, which if you see the plus minus, that's just the weighted total of games played, which means guess what? Old and New and Titans Reloaded, they 2-0'd both their matches. That's why it's 4. And if you see -4, that means you got 2-0'd twice. So just in case you were curious about what that meant, yeah, a little bit more contested here, but we will be able to see between Old and New and Titans Reloaded later on. I believe that's at 1 p.m. on the 10th. So we'll be able to see who. You can't stay undefeated forever. We're going to see those guys go head-to-head and see who gets to hold the top spot, at least for then, which is going to be nice. So yeah, at least there's a dedicated number 1 seed in Group A, whereas Group B, we still have a little bit of contention there, which is always fun.
And it's like you said, kind of exciting because with these groups eliminating bottom 2, if I remember correctly, 6 teams that are going to be moving forward to playoffs. Yep. So pretty stressful for either of them to be like you want to get those wins as soon as possible, and maybe putting more weight on their performance this week in Group B for both squads, as well as maybe, I guess, in Group A having I don't even know if I want to say a little bit of slack because it feels
like what, 3 teams tied at 1-1.
Yeah, so like all it takes is one slip up in your alley.
Exactly. Arguably more worrisome, but you gotta take your matches against the lower seeded teams and get those 2-0s. They're very important for your plus minus. So just keep that in mind. A lot of these squads are going to be playing, throughout. It's a round robin, so you gotta, battle around and make sure your record is as spotless as possible. But let's talk about the number 1 seed in Group B, DDK. They are sitting at 2-0, obviously 2-2-0s. And I think personally that the reason for their success is not solely on D-Drake, but man, D-Drake has been such an asset to this squad. Goes to the Loki a lot, which is anyone who can play Loki, I feel like is in a good spot at the moment. But even when he's not on Loki, just such a menace out of the jungle. They actually ran a competition with the Morgan, so Kalipo was also able to get a little bit of his hands dirty with things like the Thanatos transformation and the Loki transformation. But this was a lot of just watching D-Drake cook, as far as I'm concerned. Ulting to the back line, just getting the cleanups. And Loki, in my opinion, is the new, not really new, he's kind of been climbing to the top of the picks and bans for a while now. But if you don't want to reveal a lot about your draft and you're also not getting your hands on things like Sobek, like Loki is just such a safe first pick right now. Because sure, he's got a decently bad matchup in a Fenrir, but besides that, his late game is just disgusting. So when you got someone like D-Drake that is so lethal on that pick, always going to bode your team very well. Now, Titans Reloaded, of course, is one of those squads that was tied for first place, and they are still looking solid. I mean, the fact that you're tied for first place should tell you something, but they had a absolutely disgusting lead here. It looks like 26 or 24-14, not so bad, but then you look at the gold department and you see 20K, and they're kind of just doing whatever they want, right? And this is against Threat Level Midnight. Remember, this is a very solid team that we've seen played a lot in the Founders Series so far. So getting 20K at 27 minutes is just an obscene level of farm that you really cannot try to contest. Also, look at their draft, man. If you look, Neith, Fenrir, Anubis, like there is so many gods here that just make a draft. I've already harped on Loki, so I'm not going to go hard into it, but it just seems like not only do they have their P's and B's down, their farm is just ridiculous. Like, even in games where you're getting blown out, 20K gold is ridiculous, right? You should be able to end by like 10 to 12K. And especially with this early on in the game. I guess props to Threat Level Midnight for stalling out this far, but it did seem to me a little bit like Titans Reloaded was kind of playing with their food at this point. Like, they could have ended, they just wanted to farm. But yeah, definitely a lethal squadron to try and watch out for, and rightfully so, tied for first place. Old and new. This was just, you can't write things like this, honestly. This is one of those situations where in SMITE 2, EMEA in particular, you're going to see a first blood every once in a while. You're going to see a gank, but rarely do you have this domino effect where you're going to see some scrapping in mid. Oh, Dutch Whisperer gets so low, but you get to see the turn. You're like, okay, all right, Kratos got a kill. That's pretty good. Wait, oh, there's a kill over in duo. We got a kill over in duo. That's crazy. Then you go back over to solo. Or no, there's going to be one more kill in mid, and then you go over to solo, and there's still a solo kill happening. They won every lane at the 3-minute mark, and I was like, okay, like, sorry, KTG. And it was even worse because Jorby was like, hey, the last set we just casted was a stomp. I don't think that's what this is gonna be. And I was like, yeah, I think it'll be a little bit closer. And then that happened, and if in the clip, I'm pretty sure I said, you caster curse them, bro. Like, you caster cursed them so hard. I've never seen a domino effect of 6 kills at 3 minutes in like mid, duo, back to mid, solo, all at one foul swoop. You know, they were just like, all right, boys, we'll get them next time. So yeah, old and new, also incredibly lethal. Remember, they are tied for first in Group A as well with Titans Reloaded. But the Mega Plumbers, this is a team that I wanted to bring up. There is a lot of names on this squad that you will recognize from SMITE 1 competitive, and definitely still a threat in this group. But they did end up losing to DDK. So you'll see, Sager, Maskill, Wolfie, Kalas, and Zany. Definitely a squad to be messed with, and Sager was absolutely popping off on this Bacchus. Had so many different solo picks that you can try and contend with, and even if you ban them away, bro, was still absolutely feasting. But you may be wondering how a team like this fell down 1-1. Again, we've been watching guys like Maskill for years, Kalas, and Wolfie to old days of Team Rival back. Like it's been a while. And that's kind of, in tune with their name. I really like the idea of just the Mega Plumbers. But they are a threat still. Just because they fell down 1-1 does not mean that you should count them out, but they did fall to DDK, so you know what, just keep that in mind. So, just to rehash, DDK is the only undefeated team in Group A, and they are looking to try and keep it that way, and honestly, I think they could. Group P is much more contestable, but old and new and Titans Reloaded, still haven't faced each other yet, so we will see some more action there as this continues out. And remember that Threat Level Midnight is also a solid contender. They just fell down 1-1. I'm still saying, like, just because the team is not undefeated at the moment, just because you're 1-1 does not mean that you can't climb up. That plus minus is ever so important. We haven't seen a lot of three-game sets yet, but once we do, getting those 2-0s early is going to be extremely important. And, of course, you gotta beat Old and New. If they're the only undefeated team right now. So if you want to climb up, that's on everybody's mind right now. It's so nice having one uncontested first seed, because everyone's like, all right, if we just beat them, we're golden, right? If we're able to upset them, that's how you know that we can climb our way up in this round robin bracket. So that is going to be the quick roundup for what you've watched so far. But remember, 2 groups of 5, round robin. You're going to see the same teams battling it out every single week just to try and improve their records. And then, of course, later on, we'll see those teams that qualified from Swiss to playoffs that have just been sitting back and watching.
Yeah, that's the thing I think that's really exciting for these matchups, especially since it's so close in both of the groups, is that there's only a certain number that are moving forward. The rest are getting eliminated, which we'll find out this weekend who's going where. But then on top of that, you're also watching teams that are moving forward to then play against 8 other really difficult teams. So it's like, you take Old and New. You said, oh, yeah, uncontested right now. We'll see how it ends up after this weekend. But, like, suddenly they've got a target on their back this weekend, and let alone when whatever happens next weekend with whatever matchup they end up getting. It feels like it's going to be a very, very fun one to watch. Now, do you have any final succinct thoughts of EMEA?
I mean, it's just going to be exciting. Tune in November 10th. You're not going to want to miss it, because we got 2 undefeated teams going up against each other, and someone has to take an L.
11 a.m., 1 p.m. Eastern. Put that into Google and figure out what it is wherever you happen to be. And make sure that you're tuning in for EMEA. Now, on the other side of things for the Last Chance qualifier, we happen to have North America. Ooh. And in North America, JMac, things were running a little different. There's a couple more groups going on over there. And I guess likewise, more teams to be eliminated as a whole.
Yeah, so in North America, there are 16 teams that are going to be battling it out in 4 groups of 4, and each of those groups will be taking 2 to the playoffs. And we actually do have a look at the brackets, so you can kind of see how everything, in one nice little image for all of you out there to see.
Nice and
I think the big thing to kind of take away from this bracket, and one thing that maybe people who were kind of participating or looking a lot behind the scenes, is that there were a lot of matches that didn't really get fully played out. By that, I mean a lot of matchups had some forfeits for some of these teams. So there are a couple of teams that we don't have as much intel on because they just didn't get to play their first matchup, so they're kind of waiting to see what they can do this week. Or maybe their matchup was a complete stomp. Or in one instance case, one of the matches that we didn't get a chance to watch on broadcast, which is Guards Goblins and Content Team 6, and I'll talk a little bit about them for that one. But as you can see in here, it is a double elimination bracket. So if you lose in the first week, or at least in the very first round, you weren't out entirely. Mm-hmm. However, if you lose in the second round, which is the bottom one of that second one of each of them, that means that you're out. So in this instance, we can already say goodbye to 4 of the teams in here, which was in Group A, Basket of E-Kittens. In Group B, we got Baking Soda. Group C, Theater Thugs. And Group D, Employment LARPers. All 4 of those teams are out. So we're now left with only 12 teams. So everybody in the top side of the middle column, between first name Zach, Buffalo, Play-by-Play, so on and so forth, winner of those matches, they go to playoffs. If you lose, you then have to play the winner of the previous one from the bottom end of that one. And then if you win that one, you move forward. So 2 teams coming from each of these groups gives a grand total of 8, which means for the North American playoffs, it will be the 8 from Swiss and then the 8 here from the Last Chance qualifiers. And I think one area that I kind of want to start in is actually kind of down in that Group D, which is probably one of the more entertaining matchups to watch the entire weekend for North America, which was for the first name Zach versus Roll the Dice. I really did enjoy watching this matchup because these are just 2 scrappy teams to North America. These are guys who are going to want to teleport across lane and get team fights starting from duo to solo, from solo over to duo. Mid lane is just going to be doing their own thing, and the jungle is going to get as involved as they will. And for first name Zach and Roll the Dice, especially for Roll the Dice, Gozen of their solo lane is one that I was kind of keeping a lot of eyes on. The Amaterasu play, I believe, is in game number 1 that Gozen pulled out. Kind of made it to where Ama had to become a contested pick because Gozen rotates over. It's a 15 minutes. This is usually about the time we start seeing more group ups. But we don't see it like this in a lane. The mid laners aren't a part of this battle yet. You can see the Zeus, the Anubis, they're rotating over. They're trying to do their thing. Solo lane, they don't exist at the moment. You now see Gozen going to the bottom end teleporter while this entire fight is going on. Only 2 deaths up until now. Gozen is going to sneak his way up into this team fight and is just going to clean shop on the Amaterasu. It's 2 swipes for the kill and just continue the team fight. And eventually, you see Hexen matching that rotation afterward. And that's where you get the solo laners finally getting involved. Who's going to come out on top and get the kills here? Spoiler alert, it's Gozen who picks up a quadra kill on the Amaterasu in this game 1. But between these two teams, it honestly could have gone either way. I think that it's a combination of on-field play and draft as well, just because of how evenly matched they are. I mentioned that these are scrappy teams, and it's just because they like to team fight. I mean, we're 16 minutes in the game, and it's 28 kills on the board. And this was a very common thing to see multiple times throughout the set, multiple times throughout the game. But for First Name Zach, they're the ones that come out on top in this set. It's a 2-1-4 First Name Zach. And I want to give a lot of that credit over to Nexa in the mid lane, and then pulling Jabber out of the support role, which I believe is in before, and bringing in Thunderbird to take their spot there. I feel that Thunderbird made such a strong difference for this team in that support role. I love the Bacchus play that we got to see out of them. And even if this matchup may not have been the greatest for them, just the level of confidence and trust that they have with each other to start making these early rotations, to get these early kills, and really allowing Nexa on this Anubis to start kind of snowballing throughout the game, I think is what can make First Name Zach a really dangerous team to have to fight up against. So if you're playing against First Name Zach, I think draft is very important against them because you don't want to be giving these guys pressure. These North American teams love trying to scrap for early pressure, and I think that compositions that are built around that have been what's been showing success for these teams. For our second one, though, Mr. Play-by-Play versus Throat Punch Studio, which, by the way, fantastic name of Throat Punch Studio. Don't know who came up with that one on the team there, but props to them. Mr. Play-by-Play was a team that we had a little bit of questions in coming into this event. You know, they had to play against Borscht. It was a really tough matchup for them. They kind of had a rough bracket. But Mr. Play-by-Play looked clean and very confident in their play style here. And when you look at the names of it, it's maybe not so surprising. I mean, Snatty, Layers, Crim, Dashboard, Pringles, a.k.a. Shinigami, a.k.a. I'm So Pringles. Those are the 3 names that this person has gone through and now landing on the latter of those 3. This is just a team of players who have been grinding the rank scene for a long time, who have been playing at the second highest level of competitive SMITE 1 behind the SPL at that point. And it has just created this very dangerous team when it comes down to it, because sometimes you look at teams, you go, okay, these are just a bunch of ranked guys, and sometimes you see, okay, you know, maybe you pull over all of, you know, the top ranked players, but they just can't do anything as a team. In this level of play right now, it's perfect for them because you have players who are maybe a little bit less confident and competitive, but they've got that team synergy. You know, we're all friends. We're going to keep playing. And then you get these guys who just, I'm just going to button stiff you. And I mean, we saw that with Cowabunga at the early stage, where maybe Cowabunga had some moments where they were playing with each other or against each other, but they were just a team of button differs over anything else. And that's what it ends up working for Mr. Play-by-Play in this one. And another team to really look at is going to be this Father's Day team versus Alec Hate Club. And Alec Hate Club was another team that kind of fell susceptible to Borscht whenever it came down to the actual Swiss bracket. But Father's Day looked really good. In particular, LRN and Lanky had some really good games, and I think that LRN was really the player to look out for in this mid lane. The Nuwa game was maybe not the highest high for them, but it's that immediate team synergy of, and that team call of, Chase says, I'm going in, I'm going to dash taunt, and that's a near team wipe in about the span of 4 seconds. It was Chase says, dash taunt, everybody else follow me. The rest of the team followed suit and just wipe Alec Hate Club instantly. The only person who was left was Legit, who was trying to stall out a Gold Fury, and I believe was able to kind of stall this one out just a bit before eventually falling at the end of it and making it a delayed Dia-side. Alec Hate Club was a team that, for a moment after the elimination in the Swiss stage and dropped down to here, there was a moment where the team said, okay, we're not going to do it. We're going to drop out last chance qualifier. And then a day or two later, they're like, never mind, we're back in. We've got some people to kind of rally in. And I wonder if some of that is kind of coming into play where they maybe weren't super confident coming to the stage, or maybe lack some of that competitive drive to jump into here. And so that maybe affected them on play, because Father's Day, it was the underdog team. I mean, this is the team coming in from the open bracket of North America to try and jump up in here, and it really does end up making a splash. So just to kind of maybe, recap everything that happened in the groups, because again, there's 4 groups, and so there's going to be 2 teams coming out of each of those groups for North America, at least for the matchups that happened, and I say that actually got to play out this week. It was Garth's Goblins. They got their 2 over Content Team 6. Father's Day found a 2-1 over Alec Hate Club. Mr. Play-by-Play got their 2-0 over Throat Punch Studio. And then first named Zach was able to find themselves a 2-1 over Roll the Dice, and that's from groups A through D respectively. But going into this weekend, I think is where the more interesting matchups lie, because with those teams winning in that phase, that means that we now get to see what they face off against on the other half of their bracket, the teams that were, the ones that were in the unknowns, the ones who didn't necessarily have to really struggle to get to this point. And so I like to group these 4 teams as the no intel, and that's because there was nothing last week to watch for them. There was nothing to pull from there. We're in a new meta, new gods are going to be coming out, so we don't know what these guys are doing. And so now it's what does the known talent do against the more unknown talent. And I'm going to say some of the team names, and you'll look at the rosters and go, well, those guys aren't really unknown. Like, there's some pretty big names on there. But at least competitively in this section of it, they're the unknown intels, which for Group A is the Gote 5, for Group B, Yummers, for Group C, Kitty Party, and then for Group D, Buff Uller. And I think, in particular, Group C is the one I'm most intrigued in watching, because Kitty Party was the #1 coming out of North America for the open bracket side, and then Mr. Play-by-Play was on one of the lower ends coming out of the Swiss. So that's probably where our most contested matchups are going to be in Group C. So I think if there's any direct matchups, any time slots or anything to be watching, it's definitely going to be that matchup between those 2 teams. I think that North America has a lot of potential sparks to fly, and I think that now that we are in the 12 teams who are ready to slam it down and ready to really put the nose to the grindstone in this final week of play with only 1-2 matches left for some of these guys, this is where it all really counts.
Yeah, NA is in a point where EMEA is like do or die, but it's kind of everybody is still in that frenzy maybe if you're at the top. So I guess specifically like old and new, and I believe it was Titans Reloaded that Shelly had mentioned. Just like you have a slightly cushier position, but like everybody's a little stressed. Right now you're in the, hey, if you win, you go forward, right? You win your first one, guess what? You move forward. If you lose that one, then you got a second chance, unless we're wonky broadcast times, in which case, who knows? But you have to go through the very first one, qualify some teams. And so that's the thing that I'm excited for NA is I guess that little bit of added pressure, right? There's technically one loss that you can eat if you're still up in the top that is okay. But if you win that one, you qualify. So you're feeling pretty good about it. And then the second one is do or die, pressure's on, get it done or go home.
Yeah, we're pretty much now in the, these first rounds of play that are going to be happening, the winner side of the bracket. It's not as much pressure. If you get a win, cool, you get to go to the playoffs. If you lose, then it's a little bit more stressful on you, because now you have to go against one more chance to try and make it to that playoffs. And again, having 2 teams from each group that pops up in there gives a little bit more competition whenever it comes to the playoff end. But I wonder with some of these teams, with some of the teams that qualified from Swiss, there are some very titanic teams that you have to try and take down. Cowabunga, Borscht is another one. Team with 5M, Scrumptious. I just named like 4 of them right away. Let's throw Food Drive for Globe in there, number 5. How are these teams going to stack up to the playoffs is really where the big question comes in, because some of these teams really struggled when it came to some of those direct matches. I mean, if we just mentioned Borscht alone, 2 of the teams that are trying to compete to get back to that play had a difficult time matching up with them. So I think that this is really where you've got to get those last couple of reps in, get those last really big practice matches in, because you got some big competition waiting for you in playoffs.
And that's what's even wilder is you named 5 absolutely insane teams, and the realization that literally only 3 of them will move forward. Of those 5, not even including the ones we've been talking about for Last Chance. That's crazy to me, which, very similar things, I guess, happening in EMEA. But again, 3 and 3, that only makes 6. The other 2 are coming from LATAM. And as mentioned, a lot of the other regions came in, and we're doing LATAM, Brazil, APAC, all starting up and playing through their playoffs. And so the question is, well, who's doing what and where, and how's it happen? Where's the strike down? What happened is the ultimate question. And the good news is we've got a guy who happens to know exactly what happened, while I only have Cliff's notes. So realistically, it's going to be a lot more helpful. We got Anthony Malum, who is going to be standing or sitting by, I guess, more accurately.
Sitting.
Cozy. Very conveniently, we put a lot of separation between Trelly and yourself, because he kept trying to pick your nose on camera. And it was
That's
really,
my bad, man.
I see the safety mechanism in place working.
It was a wet willy also. I wasn't going for his nose, okay?
He's going for
Really got to try to reach for one this time.
I think the nose pick came a couple weeks before. Conversely, I can't help him fix his
Next
tablet.
week-
There's
next week
a lot
he's
of
gonna
things
get you
I'm a
Business
changed man, all right?
I'm a change.
I'm just here to talk about SMITE2.
Well, the good
I don't
news
want to talk about my personal life. I want to talk about SMITE2.
We're moving on, okay?
Next week, Malum, watch out.
Yeah, true. Yeah, I do have a lot to come up with. Matter of fact, you mentioned I know things. You know a guy. I know things I can't even share. There's a few broadcasts still to happen
Yeah,
from
to
these other
happen,
regions
to
that we
be
get
determined.
to see. And matter of fact, because of that, I actually won't be talking about Brazil, but we'll talk about that a little bit later. We're going to start off with LATAM, because as you've been talking about playoffs, you said it. See, that's 6. Where's the missing 2? Well, the missing 2 were in LATAM, and it was quite a fight. I have been building up and talking about how there could be this upset. It was always going to be Los Leal and Malibu making a run for those 2 spots to play in. It felt like it was theirs to lose, and matter of fact, it was starting to get close. I mentioned a lot about Team Juan really starting to give some of these teams a run for their money. I had showed a few team fights where Team Juan looked almost better than Los Leal, even. And as well as mentioning Team Kamikaze. They had the addition of Power ST2 from Brazil into their mid lane. All of a sudden, that team came alive. Well, how did it all shape up? Well, you got to playoffs. It was all in one day leading up to a grand finals that would include a bracket reset as well. So it was quite the day. And it started off with Team Kamikaze almost managing to bring down Los Leal. As a matter of fact, they were winning until one of their team members started to have some issues, unfortunately. So the matchup ended up being basically a concession of an FF from Team Kamikaze. But they were bringing the fight to Los Leal. And the reason I mention it and kind of go in depth on a more unfortunate circumstance for Team Kamikaze is Los Leal, you know, the Do You Bleed? It looked like Los Leal was starting to become mortal for the rest of these LATAM teams. I feel like I've covered so much of Los Leal being this tyrant at the top of LATAM, you know, punching down, always winning, going to Brazil, winning there, coming back, trying to win again. And that's when they finally lost to Malibu. And speaking of Malibu, they went up against Team Juan, who I kind of had them as my dark horse that could make a run for things and be the sneaky way in. Malibu was able to 2-0 Team Juan, and they looked clean while doing it. I did bring that as well, and it's Malibu stuff, you know? It's Malibu.
Malibu doing Malibu things. You're used to it
I
by
made
now.
this clip a little bit longer. The turnaround of this fight, this cuckoo ult is just... Oh, chef's kiss.
La chuza por parte de Kukulkan, mi querido Dani. Eliminación doble por parte de Fachicho. Se viene la triple. Cántame la triple. No, no se viene, sí. Déjasela. Déjasela. No seas malo. Déjasela.
No seas malo.
Directamente matanza.
Yeah, I caught that clip and my brain exploded at how, not just how good the play was and how good the Cuckoo ult was. Obviously the setup is great, but how good Malibu looked. I feel like of all the teams that we've gotten to see throughout LATAM, the growth from Team Malibu has been kind of the standout for me. And I talked about them and Los Leal, they're scrim partners, they've been growing together, getting better together, they all play NA ranked. I've talked a lot about that stuff, but to actually kind of see the fruits of their labors and the teams improve, that's been one of the really cool things. And you guys were talking about some of the names that we could see when we get to that land. They're going to have to be at that stage. If the LATAM teams want to be that dark horse, they want those upsets, they've got to be better than they probably even think they can be. And I think they actually are on the right track, as that fight looked clean. And then we get to finals, which to nobody's shock ended up being, of course, Los Leal versus Team Malibu. And it ended up doing a bracket reset because the first set went the distance in a best of 3. And then we got to a reset, and Malibu was looking strong throughout. I mean, this fight here is just... Wow. I'll let them talk here.
Es un 2 por 1, es un 2 por 2, es lo que quedó libre. Mientras tanto remataba con una doble lo que venía haciendo Kai. Queda en pie el Son Kui, es un 1 contra 3. No hay chance de que pueda escapar, pero se lleva uno, por favor. No, no tiene la roca. Se está intentando cubrir, está intentando caderear con de todo. Veremos que se va a intentar curar.
So we talked so much, and I've talked so much about the idea of could Los Leal be taken down, and it was starting to look like they could. Malibu was really bringing the fight to them. As I mentioned, the first best of 3 they did ended up becoming a bracket reset, but in the end of things, Los Leal did take a 2-0 victory in that reset best of 3 over Team Malibu. But the reason I brought that clip in particular, which, you know, might seem a little weird, Malibu beating Los Leal, who ended up winning the matchup, they have each other figured out. At this point, I think it's pretty obvious they're both really good at Smite. I mean, Team Kamikaze, Team 1, we've seen them do great. I've told you all the stuff about Team Kamikaze with Power ST2 being a proven player who's played on Ping and NA competitive. There's a lot to it. And these two teams are far and away the best that LATAM is putting forward, and they look fantastic. Now it becomes these questions of, well, how are they going to play into the other teams from the main major regions? And that's where it gets scary. I think the key to success is for them to continue working together until they can start getting some scrims with other teams the further we get, because that is one major benefit and also a little bit of a hindrance to kind of qualifying early. You've got a long time of sitting and waiting and practicing, where you might run into that thing of where SCC used to mention, oh, it's hard to find SPL scrims. It might be kind of similar, where it's going to be tough to find teams to scrim against because you don't know who's making it to December quite yet. But for Los Leal and Malibu, I think obviously watch them. I would have told you a month ago, maybe 2 months ago, that Los Leal would be the clear favorite to root as your dark horse to make it all the way to Vegas and dominate there. But I mean, it's a toss-up between the two of them. I really hope that we do get to see them both flourish, but they figured each other out, Gore.
Yeah, it's been interesting, and because like you mentioned, playing each other, whether it was outside of the competition or not, like they played each other so much just in the Founders series that eventually you're going to know each other and know your playstyles really well. So I'm excited to hear that they got closer. Maybe a little disappointed. I think I put a hit out on Los Leal at one point where I just said, somebody take him down. So
yeah, and Malibu did answer at one point, but unfortunately for them, grand finals, they did fall a bit short. But that's why a lot of we saw this with NA and EMEA as well. That's why the open bracket matters so much playing each week too, because they were both so comfortable to be able to play that way and throw caution to the wind in their grand finals, where it ended up working out. And you know, that could have gone 6 games, that ended up going basically 5. So I'm sure they're all, in a weird way, I'm sure even Malibu was like, all right, you know, at least we have to play 6 games.
Yeah. I mean, you go the distance as best you can against a team that's been giving you trouble. That's got to feel
good. Because that's been a thing with both LATAM and APAC as well, which I'll talk about now. APAC their bracket was huge. Their playoffs were even bigger, to the point where they still have broadcasting left to do and games to play in their playoffs. So I'll keep it a bit shorter here. I only have 2 clips and not too much to talk about. I really want the emphasis to be on checking out the games this weekend for APAC, because they're getting through the chunk of their playoffs, and we'll see the grand finals. We'll see the winner of APAC for this week. But looking at the early points of the bracket, I did mention before we got into the playoffs for APAC, there was a roster apocalypse, and everything changed. The whole landscape of the region, aside from Fish and Sunday School, completely shifted. The teams were brand new. 99% engaged kind of emerged as a team to watch for me. We saw the pentakill from Apes Together Strong, and we heard the casters talk a little bit about it on the viewer's guide for APAC. And those are 2 teams who are also emerging as being potential teams to kind of take everything out. I believe we're up to the semi-final stage for APAC, if we're not quarterfinals, for this coming weekend. And I did bring, like I said, I brought 2 clips. First up, I talked about Apes Together Strong. We talked so much about Fish and Sunday School. Let's give some light and shine to the other teams. This is Apes Together Strong, proving that they should not be forgotten about.
And the Earthshaker knocks up the Gorus, picks up the kill as Spirit of the Nine Winds comes out, but the gates are open, and Frenzy has found himself kills at the backline, double kill. Half Guy finds pretty hectic. This could be it. J-Beto Apes Together are strong. Uds goes down. Frenzy picks up another one.
What impresses me so much about that fight in particular, I feel like we've even seen NA teams try to do this on Sieges, that trying to split the fight in the Phoenix. I feel like we've seen this a lot in Smite 2, even compared to Smite 1, where you send your frontliner all the way past the Phoenix into the backline, and you leave your frontliners to wreak havoc. I feel like in Smite 1, we saw so often the frontliners kind of go into the Phoenix, not necessarily past it, looking for the backliners of the other team. But when it happens, I feel like one of the reasons we haven't seen it a lot is it can kind of blow up in your face. But in that moment, just how clean Apes Together Strong looked, because that's the key, right? I've talked so much about the coaching and the talent and the experience, the kind of sneaky experience a lot of these teams have in APAC. If you're going to make it far, you have got to be able to make plays like that and do it clean. Because if you go in, you make a mistake, if you have your Hercules blink forward and they turn around and they're like, oh, wait, I went in too early, they start walking back, it's all going to fall apart. But the wherewithal to be like, okay, I'm going to use my Hekate ultimate. We're not going to be phased by the Cuckoo ult. We have our sustain online. All those little things are going to be required to take out some of these bigger and more dominant teams. Apes Together Strong goes up against Sunday School, who is kind of like the Los Leal for APAC, I suppose, is an easy comparison. They've been at the top. Fish has kind of been, ironically, the question mark to Sunday School. Could Fish take them down? I thought you'd like that.
I do. I really do. I hate that I do, but I really do.
So Apes Together Strong will go up against Sunday School, and I think that's going to be the two matchups that I see, Fish versus 99% Engage, which we'll see a clip from them in a moment, and Apes Together Strong versus Sunday School. I really, truly think that's going to be the most interesting kind of combination of matchups we could possibly see, where it's like, okay, well, how is this actually going to work in terms of team fighting versus passive macro play? I think Sunday School has the potential to try to just ignore Apes Together Strong's team fighting, where I wonder if Fish is going to sort of challenge 99% Engage to more fighting. But 99% Engage, the other team I wanted to make sure we put attention to, they had patience. That was really interesting to watch. This whole fight, to me, is just patience.
Sudden is down, Ring of Spears as well. KD taking a lot of damage, doubling offensive, and the gates are open. Finding that kill onto KD, Azimo getting a trade onto Furin as well. Shutdown happening, Tempo getting a kill onto Wubby, but Wubby's getting a trade. Swifty as well is killing one for himself, doing a lot of damage. Airstrike.
It's
so much
one of those
health
things
getting
where, and I
taken.
was watching the
Gen9,
siege up to
placement
this, and it took
immunity.
some more
No
time.
health,
A
but
lot
no
of
death for him, and
99%
Swifty will be
Engage
getting that
waiting
kill
for their
onto
moment,
Swifty there,
but then they
and
saw
there's
their
3
moment and they
people
pounced,
alive.
but
Still
they didn't
left for this
overcommit
fight.
a lot. I mean,
99%
Hekate,
Engage are looking to clutch
if you
this
notice,
round.
Open the Gates is still
And
available, and they got a triple
37
kill.
minutes for this
So
game.
just 99% Engage played it
Getting
so
taken down,
well
and they
at
will
the
be
end
your
there of
game
not
winners.
kind of overexerting their resources, not overplaying their hand at the finish line. And so for me, those are the kind of strengths that a team has to have to go up against Fish. I'm really excited for APAC. They have a long broadcast weekend, and the kind of quality of games I expect that we're going to see is going to be really, really fun to watch. And it's one of those things where it's almost like how we saw the Swiss stage work out, where some of the matchups you're getting, you're like, oh, so this is why this bracket is this way. This is really cool. That's how it's working out for APAC. And that's really it for APAC.
And I know, and you kind of mentioned it, because they've got a lot of broadcasts still coming up, and they're not the only ones who have a lot of broadcasts that are coming up. And so that's the thing that I think is really exciting for this next week, is the playoffs, as you mentioned, like the games that matter, all getting screen time. And it's not just in APAC where it's happening.
It's not. It also will be Brazil. You've noticed, I'm sure I haven't talked about Brazil.
Yeah, I was really suspicious of you, honestly.
Yeah, a little bit suspicious. Brazil will have an English broadcast. We heard them before. We heard the couple Spanish casters from the Sewer crew, Piku and Danny, and the Sewer squad has, I love their name, it's so fun. They have been going crazy for a lot of the off-air games, a lot of the other regions. They've kind of been very similar to what SMITE OCL has done for APAC so far, really carrying those other regions in terms of broadcast. Well, they are going to be broadcasting the Brazil playoffs in its entirety and in English as well. Matter of fact, I don't want to kind of throw things for a loop, but I think JMac has a lot of information on both the Brazil stream upcoming and how that might work out, as well as, of course, APAC.
And I hope you do, because JMac, I've learned...
I'm trusting him.
I've been put on
I'm
the
trusting
spot.
my Hail Mary.
The guy that does a lot of the scheduling, I'm hoping that you know the scheduling.
Right. So as of now, and this is subject to change, just dependent on availability
TBD.
for some of them. I know for sure for APAC, they're going to be doing a broadcast on their normal Sunday, the very early in the day Sunday. For us, normal times for them.
Yeah.
They're also going to be doing an additional broadcast on Saturday. So it's going to be both Saturday and Sunday to catch the remainder of the APAC playoffs. For Brazil, it's a little bit different. It'll be next Thursday, tentatively, the 14th of November at around noon. And from what I've been told and from what I've seen just kind of looking through the run of show that Tess has been able to build up, we're looking at like an 8-hour at least broadcast that's going to be happening for all the matchups to be covered.
Yeah.
So if you want to catch a lot of SMITE action, not just with us on the Saturday, Sunday, but You can get it early in the morning on Saturday and Sunday this week, and you get a whole additional day of esports on Thursday the following
How
week.
cool is it that the two teams, the SMITE OCL team and the Sewer Squad, are coming together to make all that happen? I think that is so
Oh
cool.
yeah. And it also, like, I mean, like you just said, you have like no excuse. Like, you're gonna get almost smited out. Maybe, like, I'm a little concerned. There's so much that's going on, but it's gonna be really fun because, like you said, you're getting to see these specifically. Like, we've got a lot of electric matchups that are going to be coming up. I think in all of those regions. Like, if you're watching, you know, presumably at some point you drop in for Brazil on the 14th, and who knows, it's going to be incredibly spicy. But then not the 14th, the 9th, the 10th for APAC as they continue forward and have their games go on. It's going to be a lot of fun. And of course, that's not even including the other two regions that we have going on, which I think we had scheduled standing, one of the two, maybe both, or the matches that we're going to be watching this weekend. That's the one for both EMEA and NA, so you know what to expect, not just in those other regions, but also here at home for some of you and across the pond for the rest of you, whether you're in one or the other. It'll work out. We're going to be tuning in Saturday's Project Win versus Chase the Enemy, and DDK versus presumably maybe Chase the Enemy again. Then Threat Level Midnight Titans Reloaded. Of course, a lot of very fun matchups that are happening in there. Old New getting a double header. Of course, Trelly said that they're a team to watch, so that's a very fun one to make sure you tune in. And some off-air games, again, depending on how things go. Maybe off-air games become on-air games. Maybe on-air games become off-air games. Nobody really knows until we get there. But it is going to be very funny again Saturday and Sunday, 11 a.m. Eastern. And what did I say earlier? Plug that into Google and figure out where it is where you are. Daylight savings time always messes me up, both when it arrives and when it disappears, because I never know who gets affected where at what time. But that's just EMEA. We also have North America that's going to be going on. And again, a lot of very fun ones. We are going to be jumping all over the place. The on-air matches that we have scheduled right now for both A, B, C, and D are Garf's Goblins, Gote 5, Allocate Club versus loser of the matchup that you see on the left, Yummers versus Father's Day, Mr. Play-by-Play versus Kitty Party, and then Roll the Dice versus the loser of First Name Zach versus Buff Uller. And if you're wondering, like, what do you mean? What's going on? Why is this happening? Well, it's because there are matchups that are promo that we're watching, and then there are matchups that are elim and promo that we're watching. So we're getting, I guess, the best of both worlds. And as you can imagine, some of those matchups have to wait for the others to happen. So I'm assuming Group B, Group A probably firing off around the same time on Saturday, and then jumping into the second matchup. It'll be very fun. But those will be at 3 p.m., 5 p.m., both Saturday and Sunday, again, the 9th and 10th on twitch.tv/SmiteGamer, wherever you happen to be watching Smite Esports. If it's on Smite VOD, then hello from the past. But otherwise, I think we kind of nailed it.
We kind of did the dang thing.
Talk Smite
So
too.
here we go. All right, clean shop. We got to start from the top and figure it all out. EMEA 11 and 1 both Saturday and Sunday, 9th and 10th. NA 3 and 5 Saturday and Sunday right after EMEA. On the 9th and 10th, prior to those broadcasts, you'll be able to see the remainder of the APAC playoffs that are going on, and then at some point, it's still trying to figure out the exact date. There will be tweets. Go follow SMITEPro on Twitter to make sure that you know where you're going to be up to date. You'll be able to see the entirety of the Brazilian playoffs as they go on. LATAM has concluded, and there's still so much more SMITE to go. There's still playoffs after that. Then we got a whole LAN. Then we're going to Vegas. It's going to be absolutely insane. And you're going to want to make sure that you're tuning in for every single step of it. So again, make sure that you follow us on Twitter. Make sure you go to Smite VOD and SMITEPro, either for games you missed or on SMITEPro. A lot of interviews that are going up, both viewers guides that Malum has made with APAC. Trelly sat down with a few pros. I've sat down with a few pros, and we're going to be yapping with them about whatever we can get them to say. And so you're going to want to make sure that you keep your eyes open for that. Make sure you're watching the next few weeks. And as always, from myself, from Trelly, from JMac, from Malum, from everyone back in production, and everyone here at High Res Studios, I thank you all so much for tuning in. And we'll see you this weekend.